Last Friday, America watched in horror as a news story broke of yet another school shooting, this time in Santa Fe High School in Texas. 8 students, 2 teachers, fatally shot, 13 victims wounded, another devastating tragedy. The alleged gunman was a student who came into the school with his parents' shotgun and handgun and used them to commit mass murder. Of course, we grieve for the families and the victims in Santa Fe. And of course, we are grateful for first responders who ran to the sound of gunfire. But let's be honest. The shooting at Santa Fe High was, by one count, the 22nd school shooting in America this year. We're in the 21st week of this year. We've had more than one school shooting a week in the United States of America. America's school children, sadly, now go to school expecting that there'll be a shooter on the premises. After the Santa Fe High School shooting, a reporter interviewed a student at the school named Paige Curry. The reporter asked, and I quote, "Was there a part of you that was like, this isn't real? This could not happen at my school?" Paige Curry replied, "There wasn't." When the reporter asked why, she said, "It's been happening everywhere. I've always felt it would eventually happen here too." Can you imagine we've reached this point in America? That's how many of our nation's high schoolers think? And sadly, in Paige Curry's case, she was right. Her school was the target last week. On Sunday, the New York Times published an article entitled "New Reality for High School Students, Calculating the Risk of Getting Shot." The article discussed how students across America, from Iowa to Oklahoma, from Illinois to Mississippi, from Seattle to New York, are now forced to go through their day planning what they would do if the shooting starts in their school. The article quotes one student, a sophomore in a New York high school, describing how vulnerable her desks were in each class where she sat. She started making mental calculations about when the gunman came to the door, whether she would be in the line of fire. She said her English class is the safest class for her each day because it's down a hallway and it makes it hard for the shooter to find it. But her math class makes her particularly vulnerable because she said she sits in the second desk of the second row, direct path from the door. The student, whose name is Emily Rubenstein, said, quote, "It's like the front lines of a war. Being seated in front of the classroom could be what makes you live and what makes you die." It's not just high schoolers who think this way. It was my 6-year-old granddaughter came home and told her mom recently that she'd been warned that if there's a shooter in the school, she's a first grader, if there's a shooter in the school, stay away from the windows and get down on the floor as quickly as possible. Is there any sane person in America who thinks our kids should be going through this? Is there any sane person in America who believes that this is expected by the Second Amendment to our Bill of Rights? Let's be clear. Addressing our nation's epidemic of gun violence and school shootings should be a top priority. About 300 Americans are shot every day, and a third of them fatally. Gun violence is a public health crisis. It is traumatizing an entire generation of America's kids. In recent weeks, students across the country have marched in the streets, walked out of their classrooms to call on us, elected leaders, to step up and do something to reduce gun violence. The students are having an impact. At least 15 states have passed legislation to close gaps in their state gun laws since February 14th, and that was the date of the Parkland shooting in Florida. 4 states, Maryland, Florida, Vermont, and Washington, have passed bills to ban bump stocks. Congress has not. 7 states have passed bills to make it harder for domestic violence abusers to get guns. Kansas, New York, Ohio, Oregon, Utah, Vermont, and Washington. Congress has not. 3 states have passed red flag laws to temporarily remove guns from people who pose extreme risks. Florida, Maryland, Vermont. These state-level reforms are significant. They're even happening in states like Florida and Kansas, which have a reputation of being friendly to the gun lobby. I hope my state of Illinois will soon join ranks of these states who passed meaningful state-level gun measures this year. We came close in Illinois when the General Assembly passed a landmark bipartisan bill to provide more accountability for gun dealers' sales. Governor Bruce Rauner unfortunately vetoed that bill, but the General Assembly is working hard to put a revised bill back on his desk. In addition to these state law reforms, the student movement has brought major changes in corporate behavior. Major gun retailers like Dick's Sporting Goods and Walmart have voluntarily changed their sales practices. Companies like Delta, United, Hertz, and Avis ended affinity relationships with the National Rifle Association. And institutional investors and financial companies are now pressuring the gun industry to change its behavior. These businesses understand that inaction is not an option. The student movement for gun safety has helped them realize this. Unfortunately, it is extremely unlikely that this Congress will take any meaningful action this year to reduce gun violence in America. Why? Because President Trump and the Republican majority in Congress still won't push for any gun reforms that the gun lobby opposes. They are letting the gun lobby dictate federal policy. That is a mistake. It is disgraceful. The gun lobby cares about one thing above all else: selling guns. They are not going to support any reforms that might reduce their sales. On Sunday, the incoming president of the National Rifle Association, Oliver North, you may remember from the Iran-Contra controversy, blamed everything from video games to Ritalin for our epidemic of school shootings, blamed everything except guns. In fact, rather than support efforts to strengthen our gun laws, the gun lobby is gearing up for its last big push this year to urge Congress to weaken our gun laws even further. On April 16th, the Washington Examiner reported that longtime NRA board member Grover Norquist, quote, said he had received assurance from the Republican leadership that Congress will put the NRA's concealed carry reciprocity bill on the agenda this year before the August recess. Make no mistake, as appropriation bills and the defense authorization bill move through Congress, the gun lobby and their allies are looking to weaken the gun laws on the books even more than they already have. America, keep your eye on Congress. To all the students and young people across America who are asking for leadership when it comes to reducing gun violence, many of us hear you loud and clear, and we're not giving up. Congress may not get the job done this year when it comes to closing the enormous gaps in our loopholes, but this movement of young people is making incredible things happen in state houses across America. They are rapidly becoming a major force for change in corporate behavior, and they are soon to be voters. This movement is getting results, and Congress is going to have to choose who it'll listen to. The students who are spending their class time thinking about whether their desks are in the line of fire, or the gun lobbyists who want to further weaken gun laws on the books so they can make more gun sales. I know where I stand. I'm going to keep doing everything I can to put the safety of my granddaughter, my grandson, and kids across America and our neighborhoods ahead of the gun lobby's agenda of selling more guns. We may not be able to stop every shooting in our schools and in our streets, but if Congress takes meaningful action to close the gaps in our gun laws, we will save lives.